Hi, my name is Carolyn Caywood, and this is my video out. That is complicated. I have on occasion put on a survey, transphilic. I grew up in central Ohio and went to college at Kent State University before it became famous. And there I met a person who, at that time the term was transvestite. And we dated, and we got married, and it didn't last, but not on that grounds. He had other issues, mainly honesty and money. But by that time I had gotten into the network or community of trans people, such as it was in 1970. And so a lot of my friends were there. And we wound up, before we split up, in Detroit, Michigan. So I went to library school in Detroit, Michigan, and then went back to Cleveland to work. I went to work in Cleveland, Ohio as a librarian. And mutual friends in the trans community did a hey, you want to meet so-and-so? And apparently told him the same thing. So we met. And I met my current spouse in feminine presentation, and learned that she was a darn good cook. And so we dated and got married, though this was all undercover at this time. I'm still talking about the 1970s. My family had no idea that I knew all of this stuff. So anyway, we got married. We moved to Virginia Beach about a few years after we got married, primarily because we both were unhappy with our jobs, and so we were both looking. I was looking maybe harder. At any rate, I found a job with the Virginia Beach Public Library. And I hope they won't die when they hear that. And so we moved down here, and life went along with us basically looking like a standard heterosexual couple to the outside world for about 30 years. At that point, my spouse got prostate cancer, and that was fairly harrowing, but for me it was a wake-up call. Kathleen disagrees with me on where the aha moment occurred, but that's her moment. My moment was that I really want this person no matter what. So we started looking around, branching out a little more. We're now in the early 2000s, which is a lot different from the 70s. And we went to a gathering called Fantasia Fair out in Provincetown. It's really nice. It was incredibly liberating. I actually got to walk down the street with Kathleen holding hands and not have to worry about being attacked. That was a moment. And so after a couple of years of that, and Kathleen joined the MCC Church in Norfolk, got a little more experience there. She came to the conclusion that what she really needed to do was transition. So she transitioned at the end of the year 2007, in December. She was working for the New York Times. They have a, I guess you call it the back end, the payroll and bill paying stuff down here in Norfolk. And being a computer type, she was working there. So the New York Times knows what to do. She transitioned on the job. Their HR department swung into gear. They did all the good things just right. That was great. We continued to go to Fantasia Fair, and I had brought up in a couples discussion group, well, we talked about this, and I'd said, well, I'm just not going to tell anybody. And basically they all looked at me and said, you think you're going to get away with that? Everybody who was in this group of couples basically said, you're not going to get away with this. You better take charge of how the information comes out, because it's going to come out. So I started thinking very seriously about that, and since Kathleen was transitioning in mid-December, I decided that I would do my coming out moment that week. And partly I felt I had to do this because the library environment was small enough that most everybody knew everybody else's spouse. And there was the possibility that they'd think I killed him and buried him in the rose bed. So I thought I better, okay. So we had a meeting of branch library heads in the morning, and at the end of the meeting, I said I had something to tell you. And I just, blurt, my husband's transgender and he's transitioning and I'm okay with it, okay? You got any questions, ask me. And it was really interesting. I swear to you, there was somebody who left so fast I heard the air clap behind. But some of the other people came up and they were just, oh, is there anything I can do to be supportive? And they weren't necessarily the ones I'd expected. So then in the afternoon, I told my branch library staff, and then I went home and died. But I have to say, now librarians are good people, you have to understand that. But nobody ever gave me any trouble whatsoever. Some people seem to have a mental block. They'd occasionally ask me about my husband, but others would make a point to ask me about Kathleen. So, I don't tell everybody, but I do tend to tell people, because I figure since I'm out, I might as well do what I can to pave the road. You will live through it. Heteronormativity is a real thing. You will have this strange experience that people assume you've got a husband. I mean, it's so knee-jerk. And it's not that they're being mean, they just have their brains haven't expanded yet. So I keep bumping up against that even today, this assumption that if you're female and you're married, you got a husband. And secondly, you're gonna have to deal with the assumption that who you're partnered with defines your sexuality. I don't see myself as a lesbian. I have said it's because I never paid the dues. Or maybe I paid dues to a different club, I'm not sure. But it isn't quite the right word for where I am. And no label works really well. But people are going to try to put you in a box because they're not happy with people who aren't in boxes. Right? We got married in 1976, and the transition was the end of 2007. So we had 30 years of facade. I think I knew it more than he did. I was aware that it meant more and went deeper than with other people I knew who were cross-dressers. Even though my spouse claimed that it was only a cross-dresser. But I always had a sense that it was a lot closer to what we used to call transsexual. And so eventually we all got there. The most at-risk group is trans women of color.
Yeah.
Who are not financially secure. Now, a middle-aged trans woman who is white and not too tall, not too bulky, isn't in that much danger. I can speak for spouses, and do as often as possible. That's a very difficult question. I think you've got to ask. And it may vary from person to person. Here in Norfolk, we've got something called the Transgender Assistance Program that helps with homelessness. Certainly what I can do is give to that group time and money. And there may be similar groups everywhere. Other places, not everywhere obviously, there may be the possibility of helping one start. The LGBT Center here is good about helping, and those are the things that occur to me. HIV is a big issue. Even for people who are gay, there's a world of difference between somebody who's got a career in a relatively welcoming field and someone who got kicked out at 16 and doesn't have a high school degree. You know those things where they tell you to find an adjective that rhymes with your, that alliterates with your name? I always use curious. I am curious about everything, which is why I made a good librarian.
I love that.
It lends to itself to a certain amount of openness if you are always learning more. Well, it's been an astounding 10 years. If we were making the decisions today that we made in 2007, I'm not sure they'd be exactly the same.
Yeah. What do you think would be different, or what do you hope?
Well, today there seems to be some understanding that each trans person can find a unique answer. And just 10 years ago, again, it was boxes. You've got to move from box male to box female. And there's nothing exists between these two boxes. And we've gotten a little more sophisticated since then.